Hey everyone, let's do a little fun deep dive with this Ethereal Visions Tarot. It is the most popular deck, at least according to Amazon, and I believe that many people still order their decks on Amazon. So if Amazon says it's the number one selling, it's probably overall a pretty good, pretty well selling deck. So we're going to look at it. I was very skeptical of this at first, which is why I've been ignoring it for years and I have never bought it. But I figured we were in order for another deep dive. We are overdue for another deep dive. I haven't done one of these in like probably a year at least. And we're going to look at the symbols, the artwork, all of the good stuff about this tarot deck. So if you don't know who I am, if you were here for the first time because of this beautiful deck, welcome. I'm Anya Esma and I've been making videos about tarot for a very long time on the internet. Usually I teach tarot, though I do have some other deep dives for decks as well. As I said, I haven't done one in a long time, but I've done one for the Wild Unknown deck, which for a while was the most popular deck out there. Look at this beautiful little guidebook already. I've done one on the Shadowscapes tarot deck, the Game of Thrones deck, and so many more. And also some not so well-known decks, because I think it's really important that we as tarot readers look at how different the imagery can be, even if a deck is based on the Rider-Waite-Smith, so the classical tarot deck. You still have so many differences. You still have so many beautiful symbols in it. You have so many different people in it, different positions that the people are in. So there's so much more room for interpreting the cards differently. And that's what I want to show you with this deck as well. I'm very excited about this. I've prepared this very carefully. I've chosen the cards I want to talk about, and I can tell you that it's very interesting because this deck has a lot of interesting aspects that other decks do not. So today we are going in with this deck. So it is the Ethereal Visions deck by Matt Hughes. Your eyes are not deceiving you. You're not going crazy. This is German. It does not say Ethereal Visions. It says Ätherische Visionen because I'm German and this is the German version of the deck. The subtitle is The Illuminated Tarot, which is probably one of the reasons that it is so popular, because illuminated means that it has a lot of gold elements in it, as you can already see on this card, for example. And honestly, I thought it had gilded edges. It does not. Maybe there's a special edition that does, but it doesn't. I was surprised that I just noticed it, because I was about to say, oh, it has gilded edges, but it doesn't. It just has these gilded decorations on every single card, though, which is still a pretty big deal. So that's the first reason it's so popular. Probably the second reason is that it is Art Nouveau. Personally, I do prefer the Tarot Mucha, which is also kind of, this is the backs of the cards. This is also a Art Nouveau deck inspired by Alphonse Mucha's art. And I prefer that one because it's a bit more, it's not as fancy, you know? This is like a good tool. And this one is kind of a fancy deck. Now, the third reason I think it is so popular is because it is incredibly cheap. It is incredibly cheap for what it is. It has, as I said, gildings on every card, but it is just 25 euro. I don't know if it's also $25 in America, maybe 30, I don't know. But 25 is like the usual price for the, let's say, mass-produced lower end tarot decks. And it holds that price point. I don't know how. I don't know how they put gilding on every single card, and yet it is so cheap. But who knows? But also the cards are relatively thin. Relatively thin. But these ones are too, I guess. So let's not be too strict. So one more thing before we start diving in. Honestly, I was looking at this deck online and I thought it had people of color. I thought it had more representation than just white people. And I was looking through the deck and I kept waiting for a person of color and there was none. So that is a negative for me because I do love tarot decks that have different representations of visual features and more diversity than just white people. And for some reason, I could have sworn that on the example image that I saw of it, there was people of color, but I guess I was tripping or it was a different deck that I was thinking of. Yes. So as usual, as we go through these cards, you can get out your own deck if you have one. You can also get out your Rider-Waite. That might be fun to compare it with this. Definitely get a drink because this will be a long one. And I will pay a lot of attention to the details in the depictions, the symbology. We try to find a lot of depth and meanings in the cards, more than just what the tiny little guidebook has to say, and also kind of compare it to the traditional meanings of the Rider-Waite-Smith. If this is your first time watching one of these deep dives, I just want to alert you to the fact that I will not go through every card because that would take a whole day. This video would be 23 hours long, probably. And I have picked the images that I think are most interesting, that speak to me the most, or that have the most difference to the Rider-Waite-Smith. And yeah, it is my pick today. If you really want to hear my thoughts about a different card from this deck, do let me know in the comments. Also, do tell me if you have this deck in the comments. I would love to hear what your experiences are with it, reading with it, if it works out well for you, and what your thoughts are. Or if you don't have it, you can just write in the comments whether you want it or not. And also do like this video and subscribe if you feel like it. I haven't started yet, so you don't know yet if I'm worthy of a subscribe, but you will see very soon. All right, let's start with the major arcana. We start with the Fool. So here you go. I hope you can see it very, very well. So it's a relatively common depiction, of course, with the dog representing our nature, representing our instincts, our instinctual nature, essentially, our wild self. And the interesting thing is this dog seems relatively unworried. If you compare it to the Rider-Waite-Smith card in your own deck that you have in front of you, maybe, you will see that the dog, I think it like drags at the pants or something of the Fool, so trying to hold him back, maybe trying to stop him from taking that leap of faith, representing how our nature and how our innate instincts often keep us from taking leaps of faith because we are so full of fear instinctually, and our survival mindset is trying to keep us very, very safe, and that's what the dog usually represents. Interestingly, this dog is jumping along quite happily and not really that worried. Not really that worried. So that's the first difference to the Rider-Waite-Smith we have. So you could interpret this differently as your fears already having been overcome. So even if you think you have some fears, examine them, and maybe you've already overcome them, and that wild dog within you, that wild wolf, is actually ready for that leap of faith that the Fool requires. So here we have another uncommon symbol, which is the umbrella. We will see this kind of image in a few other cards. I will point that out as we get there. Interestingly, within the umbrella, we have this sky of stars reflecting in there. And I read this sort of as the protection of the universe, protection of the world being signified by this, essentially helping you to land softly. Of course, you can't land softly if you jump off a cliff with an umbrella, but I'm talking about the symbology here, the fantasy, the idea that by the grace of the stars, you are protected, and that is what the umbrella is for. Let me just put on my glasses for a second to see if you can actually see the cards very well. I think you can. I think that's good, isn't it? It's really difficult for me to see because I have a mirror where I can see myself and the camera, what my camera is filming. But it's very difficult to see in the mirror whether it's sharp and spicy or not. But I hope you can see it. So that's it for the Fool. Do keep in mind the umbrella with the stars. That will be interesting in the future as well. So the next card we will talk about is actually the Magician. The flowers on this card are also similar to the flowers that we have on the packaging. If you see them like right here on the sides. And they remind me, I just want to say, of the Queen of the Night blossoms, because these kinds of blossoms, they are not very usual for flowers. They look very special. And if you Google Queen of the Night flower, you will see basically this blossom, and it only blooms for one night and then closes again. So that rare power of this process of blooming that we have with the Queen of the Night flowers could point us towards an interpretation where we think you can't always be a magician. You have to gather your energy and release it in a burst with intention rather than dragging it out. Magic isn't really something that you drag out. It's something that you focus, send out, boom. And I think the Queen of Night fits really well with that, because she just blooms for one night, gathers all of her energy, and then blooms for one night, and that's it. The next card I want to talk about is the High Priestess. First of all, I love the outfits. I love the black tight gown around her shoulders. And I feel like because it looks so dark and so, you know, black, her skin looks like it doesn't exist. I feel like it represents that emptiness that you have to have as a high priestess to be a vessel for knowledge, to be a vessel to be poured into. If you believe in psychics, if you believe in mediumship, there has to be a degree of emptiness and a space to be filled. And I think that outfit somehow represents that in a really cool way. So essentially, the space that you need to carve between your head and your heart to be open to create wisdom and to share it. So that's what that blackness represents for me. I know it's just an outfit, but we love interpreting things here. So there you go. I like the fact that the book in her hand seems to be a bit folded. It seems to be like it is being read, like it is actually used. And I like that a lot. Because sometimes the book just looks a little bit too perfect in her hand, or the scroll that she's holding. So now we take a bit of a jump forward and speak about the Chariot. Haha, a jump forward. Very fitting with the Chariot. I just realized that. So similar, the position is really similar to the Fool. Let me show you that. I feel like you can kind of see that they hold their arms a certain way. They both kind of jump. And I think that's a first really interesting commonality between the two, because it kind of links the Chariot back to the Fool. But this time, it's not a leap of faith. It is moving with intention and with help as well. Because once again, just like with the Fool, we do have the stars in the background. We have a whole sky, actually, no longer just a little umbrella with a sky, but an actual full-on sky. And I think that's really interesting. It could signify, as usual, the alignment between your actions, your wishes, but also external influences, the universe being by your side, the universe having your back, very literally in this card, as you see. I think that's a really interesting touch. Whenever I interpret wildly like this, I do wonder if the artist at all intended that, or if it was just, oh, I think I'll put a star of skies, a sky of stars behind this person, and that's it. That's all they thought, maybe. But we're here to go deep. We're here to have the harebrained, weird interpretations. So give me yours if you have any more. I do like this chariot a lot, by the way. My soul card is chariot if you add my birthday together. So I always struggle a bit with the chariot cards because I don't like them. Oh, how fun. My doorbell just rang and my copy of the transparent tarot that I've been waiting for weeks has come. I know I just said that I don't buy tarot decks a lot, and I don't, but these two I bought around the same time. And the transparent tarot was really hard to get because the original comes from I don't know where. There are so many Chinese fakes that I didn't want to buy, but anyways, we're talking about the ethereal visions. I will maybe, once I've looked at the transparent tarot for myself sufficiently, maybe I will make a video about it too. I think that would be a lot of fun, but I don't know yet. Let me know in the comments if you would like to see that. Okay, hydration break. Drink something, tea, water, whatever you want. And then we continue. So, interestingly, we will talk about justice now. So, one really interesting detail, look at the card, see if you notice it. One really interesting detail that I don't see a lot in tarot decks is that her eyes are white. They're empty because she is blind. Usually, she wears blindfolds in cultural representations, but also in tarot decks. But this one is not wearing a blindfold. She is just blind visibly. And I think that's really cool because I haven't seen the white eyes before, usually just the blindfold. It goes back, obviously, to how the goddess of justice was often depicted as being blind. At first, I didn't know this, but at first, she was being called blind not as a good thing, but as satire, because people would make fun of how blind the supposed justice is to the injustices in the world, which nowadays is as true as ever. But nowadays, the representation of the interpretation of why she is blind is more that she is impartial. She is the ideal judge because she does not judge by looks or anything else superficial, but by the truth of someone's story, by the truth of someone's character that she can see through with her mind's eye. That is how nowadays we interpret that. I like the owl as the addition, as you see down here. It's not usually in the depiction of justice, but it fits her very well because it reminds us of her wisdom. And it's also the animal associated with the goddess Athena. So that is a little interesting nod to wisdom and to that goddess as well. You can go with that as deeply as you want. Now we have the Hanged Man as the next card. Now, this one is quite different from the representation in the usual Rider-Waite-Smith because he holds the own cord to hold himself up. I don't think that is physically possible, but it's not supposed to be realistic, right? It's supposed to be poetic. And thus, it is his own decision that he is hanging there, because if he would let go of that cord, he would fall down, which would probably hurt, but still he is holding himself in that position. In other decks, he's usually tied up, and it seems more like a situation that he cannot get out of on his own and that he has to come to term with. It's not something that he did to himself. So this can be read a bit differently than the traditional card. Rather than being about, oh, you're stuck in a situation and you have to change your perspective, you have to find your agency, you have to find what you can learn from this situation. Here we have the idea of you are limiting yourself, and it is time to see that. Or maybe you are doing it on purpose, you are purposefully limiting yourself, and it keeps you from seeing certain things, it keeps you from seeing the truth, because you are limiting yourself and you're seeing everything upside down. So think about where you limit yourself, how you can learn from that. That's essentially what this card is talking about. Now, next one that we look at is the Tower. So this one is also quite different. There is a person falling down, but the tower isn't being destroyed. The mask, interestingly, is also still on the person, maybe representing the ego, because the tower is a lot about building something really high, whether it is externally or internally with your ego, and then realizing it's not as stable as you thought it was, and not being able to admit that it will eventually collapse. And here we have maybe the implication that the ego has not been let go of. This person is maybe obsessed with whatever image they created of themselves and for others. And they could not let go of that image. They could not go deeper. So it tumbles down. It's more of a psychological representation of the ego death rather than saying your life will change or collapse, because the tower, when the tower collapses, it is usually read as your life is changing a lot. There might be something collapsing that is unsustainable. And here the tower is fine. The person is just falling out. So it's more about the psychological aspect of shadow work. It's more of an inner change than in the usual tower card. And this one, yeah, actually looks pretty steady, this tower. So that's interesting. It's more in the mind. It's all in the mind. Now, next, we will talk about the Moon card. Again, we have, let me get out the Fool and the good old Chariot that we've seen already, because once again, we have some stars in this card. So like in the other ones, but a lot more of them if you compare them. So here we have very few stars with the Fool, and a lot of stars with the Chariot, and then a lot more with the Moon. And I think it's really cool how the person in the card is gazing at that sky, studying it, learning from them, maybe just staring at the stars, and at the same time staring within the self. So I think it's a pretty positive moon card. Actually, it kind of reminds me of the star, because sometimes the moon is associated, it usually doesn't have people in it, just, the tower, the lobster, and all of that. But in this case, there's a person, and the person seems quite at peace, quite relaxed, just stargazing at the many, many, many stars. And I think that's a nice alternative representation of the moon, that it is introspective and calm and finding your quiet place to reflect, essentially. Next card, the Sun. So this is kind of the first card where the person interacts with a frame. Of course, you could argue about that. Is the sun part of the card, or is it part of the frame? But if you look at it, all the cards have like some framing elements here. Like this, like here you have the round frame. Here you have a frame kind of made of leaves or trees. And here I feel like she is just grabbing the frame, and that's kind of like breaking the fourth wall. And that goes really well where it goes really well with the sun, because it is a choice to see the sun. It is a choice to see the truth. It is a choice to see the world as it is, and maybe also to see the positive in the world. Whereas with the moon, it is a lot more passive. You grasp the sun. It's an active act. You grasp that insight and that happiness that comes with stepping outside of the night. Or you can stay in that inner night for a longer time and maybe even lose yourself in it. And it is a choice to grasp that positivity, to grasp that light of the sun. And I think it is represented very well here, because she's just grabbing the sun. I love it. All right, so next one, Judgment. Interestingly, I need to ask you something. There's these flowers with skulls. I hope you can see these really well. These little flowers have little skulls in them. And I feel like I've seen flowers like that before, but I don't know where. And it kind of reminds me, of course, of Dia de los Muertos or whatever it is called. I don't speak Spanish. I'm sorry. I should know this. It reminds me of that, but I was Googling it and I never found flowers with little skull representations in the middle of the flowers. I don't know the official meaning of these. Is there any from stories around the world, from lore, symbology around the world? Little flowers with skulls. Tell me, let me know. There is a flower called snapdragon that I found. When the flowers die, they look like little skulls, which looks kind of cute. But that's not what's happening here. It's blossoming and it has skulls inside of it. So I think what I like about this card, other than that, is that it is very clear that the spirits of the people are going up into judgment, essentially. With some judgment cards, you don't really get that. There's just corpses, or there's people living and there's people who are dead. And here it's very clear that it is about the metaphysical rising out of whatever situation you are in now, being called into something higher and into your destiny. So I like that. A little break before we get to the last major arcana card. Drink something, have a laugh if you want, or whatever you like to do on your breaks. I don't know why that came to my mind. So let's talk about the world, of course. So this is the second card where the person is interacting with the frame. Again, we had the sun where she's grabbing the sun, and here the person is grabbing the wreath that is surrounding her, which I think is really interesting. It shows a sense of control, I would say, and a sense of understanding the terms of existence, understanding how the world around you works and manipulating it, or grasping any opportunity that you can get, essentially being able to understand the patterns that surround you and interacting with them, breaking out of them. She's not breaking out of that frame, mind you, but still she is touching it. She has some sort of grasp of what is surrounding her. And I think that's really interesting, and a great representation of how the world card works. It adds something, in the Rider-Waite-Smith, we often just think of the world as, yeah, something is ending, something is coming full circle, but it's also the understanding that comes with it, the understanding that a full circle moment provides you with. And until you enter the next spiral where you might get to a similar point, but still for now you have seen a pattern, you have identified a pattern, and it's the end of one loop. All right, let's continue. This deck has 2 additional major arcana cards, and I do want to talk about them. So here we have 22, which is called the Well, or the Source. I don't know what exactly it is called in English. In German, it's der Brunnen, which is just a well, but I could imagine that maybe it's also called a source in English or something. So the astrological correspondence that we have here is Earth. This is listed in this little book. Each major arcana card has an astrological correspondence, in case you didn't know, and they list them in this book. And the one that they list for the well is Gaia. It is the Earth, which usually the Earth does not have a corresponding tarot card. So I think it's really cool that they made this. So if you look at it, I like the idea. I like the idea that the earth is the source of inspiration, ideas, transformation. And that's exactly what the little booklet lists. It lists as positive meanings caretaking, opportunity, nature, and creativity. And as negative meanings, destruction, coldness, end, and stagnation. It reminded me a bit of Taoism, where the living and dying of nature is seen as this endless cycle, this endless up and down, this endless expansion and pulling together that is just connecting everything in existence. And somehow this card reminded me of that, or at least with the meanings that it has, with it can mean both opportunity, but it can also mean an end. It can mean creativity, but it can also mean stagnation, which is like polar opposites. It reminded me of that concept in Taoism, that it's all, if you want to have creativity, you also have to have stagnation. If you want to have a beginning, you also have to have an end. If you want to have coldness, you got to have warmth. If you want to have destruction, you need to have creation, and so on and so forth. So I feel like the card kind of represents that universal order of opposites. So I would read this card, if I had to interpret it, as a reminder to go back to the source of everything, which is the earth. The earth is the source of where we come from, and creating from that endless stream of the earth and that knowledge that we are from the earth, on the earth, of the earth. And yeah, I really like that. Mm. It could also mean going back to the source of some issue that you have. If you want to read it in a more mundane way, it would be a pointer to go back to the source. And then the second additional major arcana that they did is called the artist. In German, it's der Künstler. I will just assume in English it's the artist. It's the only thing that makes sense. So, as positive meanings, the author lists visionary, creator, and passionate. And as negative meanings, he lists unstable, judgmental, nervous, and greedy. I think that's really interesting to kind of, imagine an artist, like kind of an eccentric artist who is visionary and passionate, and he's a creator, but at the same time, he's unstable, judgmental, nervous, and greedy. I think that's like a really funny list of qualities to bring into one card. And I like it because it describes the archetype of the artist. Sorry, I've been wiggling this card. Let me hold it properly for you. There you go. Take a good look at it. Yeah, I mean, artists have big ideas, but they also judge themselves, they judge others very harshly, they can be very perfectionistic. So, this card could also be a warning that you are being too perfectionistic, or that you need to be more active in your engagement with the world and become creative rather than just looking at it. Because when I look at the card, I feel like the artist is kind of scared of whatever he's seeing. I mean, he's also excited. He's trying to draw this life tree, I suppose, and these clouds, but he also looks a little bit scared. And maybe this is also about not just creating, but also interacting with reality. Before we get to the minor arcana, let's take another little hydration break. My voice is becoming tired. Do comment, what is your favorite card so far? Card, card from the major arcana. Do you have a favorite? Are there any that you like? I do like the two additionals probably the most. And also let me know if you have any more ideas about the symbolisms of these cards and so on. I'm happy to hear what symbols I might have missed in these cards. I love looking at all of the meanings, like going even deeper, going at the meanings of plants on the cards. What kind of trees are there? What kind of flowers are there? Anything else to broaden my horizon, let me know. All right, I have picked a few minor arcana cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7, the magical number. So the first one I want to show you is the Three of Cups. Now, if you know the Rider-Waite, or if you have it in front of you, you can see that this is quite different. Usually, the Three of Cups, the women are dancing or laughing or drinking. They're somehow moving with each other, and you can see this dynamic of a celebration. Whereas here, they are quite stationary and they are singing. And I feel like that adds another meaning that is a bit closer to the Three of Pentacles, this idea of working together, putting your voices together to create something bigger. You might also notice that one of them is not singing. But in general, I would say it kind of has this vibe of a choir where not one person is singing, but everybody sings. And it doesn't matter how well you sing because your voice kind of carries. It becomes one voice. That's the whole point. And I think that's a really beautiful meaning for the Three of Cups and for community in this context. But the silent person, let's look at that a little bit more closely. It could make the card mean that either you or someone you know is not contributing as much to your vision, your friendship, your community as you might think. Or it might mean that someone or you is not believing in community or in a shared goal that you have with someone. So it could warn of that because that one person is silent. Okay, now let's look at the Six of Cups. I like this one a lot. Six of Cups. I should probably say more often what these cards are because it's in German. So you, if you miss it, if you miss me saying it, you might not be able to identify the cards. So Six of Cups. Now, um, this is just kids playing. I like that because in the usual Rider Waite and a lot of other decks, you also have grown-ups in these cards. It's not just the children playing, and here you have just the kids doing their thing, which I find very meaningful. I love this depiction because it really takes you back. It takes you back to how you used to play as a child, to just imagine a world. You just do something. They aren't even doing something, useful. They are taking flowers and putting them in the cups, which I guess you could say they're decorating things, but they could also put all the flowers in one cup and it would achieve the same thing. But they're just doing what kids do. They're just playing around with it and experimenting. And I think looking at the card really draws me into that. Um, yeah, doing something for the sake of beauty, essentially, doing something for the sake of just doing it, not because it makes sense. And that's essentially what seeing the world through the eyes of a child is. Not doing things that make sense necessarily, but doing things that contribute beauty, fun, creativity for no other purpose than to just do whatever you feel like doing, really. Now, the Eight of Cups. I have a lot of cups cards, as you can see, because I think the cups are one of the most interesting suits of this deck because they are so different. Now, we have a very untraditional depiction here. Usually, you see a person walking. This person is resting, and it seems like they've already made it on top of the mountain, or at least they're well on their way there, which in the Eight of Cups, usually the person is in the flatlands and walking towards or away from the mountain, depending on which deck you look at. But here they're sitting straight in the mountains. And usually, traditionally, it's about leaving something good behind, leaving those Eight Cups behind to climb further, to climb higher, moving towards something higher, even if everything is fine where you are. That's what the Eight of Cups represents to me usually. And this person is already ahead of that. They've already made that step to climb higher, even if everything's fine. And they're in the middle of the mountains looking not really, I don't know if they look happy. They might look exhausted. They might just be gazing up at the beautiful moon and taking a rest. You can't really tell what that person is feeling. And I think the coolest thing is the huge moon because it also gives the card this vibe, this idea of getting closer to insight about yourself, that darkness within yourself, that self-exploration, that shadow work, that mysticism that is associated with the moon, and getting closer to that in your journey as you climb the mountain. My words are jumbling. So as I always like to say, with every challenge that you take on, you grow within yourself. Even if you don't grow outwardly, at least you grow within yourself. And that is what that card mostly represents to me. If it comes up in a spread, it would be telling you, yes, you are growing, even if you might not see it, even if there is darkness around you. and it's challenging. You are growing because of it. Now, the next card I want to look at with you is the Page of Pentacles. Another interesting variation, because usually the pages are on a journey, they are ready to go. Sometimes they are standing, sometimes they are walking, depending on the deck. And this one seems to be a bit caught up. The legs are like tied up with each other, like they are in deep thought. The thoughts might be convoluted because the legs are kind of convoluted. And it's stopping them from continuing. They're just sitting there staring at the little pentacle. And it seems like they're uncertain what to do with it. There's not a willingness to explore. There's just this focus on the coin, which could be a positive thing or it could be a negative thing. It could mean you are preparing very carefully for a journey that is ahead of you instead of just walking and running out. You are preparing carefully and looking at what is in front of you very carefully. But it could also be trust yourself more. Trust yourself more to find the right path as you are walking. But it could also mean learn more about finances, about health, whatever it could be in the context of that spread, and take action based on that knowledge rather than blocking yourself, because that person is literally blocking themselves. They're blocking their feet. So instead of blocking yourself, trust yourself, gather the knowledge you need, and then act. The Ace of Swords. At first, I didn't notice that this card was kind of untraditional and special. I was like, yeah, it's an Ace of Swords. And then I realized that the person is grasping the blade, not the handle of the sword, which I think is super interesting. Because the energy of the swords sits in their sharpness. It can be the sharpness of wit, it can be the sharpness of words, of intelligence, of thoughts, of honest communication, which can also have a certain sharpness to them. And I feel like this signifies that sometimes you have to grasp that sharpness. Sometimes you have to realize and, touch that sharpness, that sharp truth, and bear that sharpness, bear that truth in order to grow. I feel like the Ace of Swords is telling you that. Like there's a bullet you have to bite, a frog you have to swallow, or whatever you say in English. In German, we actually say to bite into the sour apple. That's like biting the bullet is wrong. Biting the bullet means dying. No, I meant swallowing the frog. I think that's what you guys say in English. But yes, in German, we say biting the sour apple, having to do something that is not comfortable, but needing to do it. And that's what the Ace of Swords is reminding us of here. It's like cutting through illusions by taking the blade into the hand and feeling that sharp truth. Sometimes that's what you have to do to cut through illusion. You have to, metaphorically cut yourself with the truth and see the truth of a situation and, live with it. All right, next card, the Nine of Swords. Also a very interesting one here. Usually we just see the person sitting up in the bed and then the swords are like stacked above the person on the wall. But here we have more specific memories that are being displayed. I hope you can see that well because everything is kind of blue and like fine lines. But we actually see what keeps up this person at night. You have scary figures like a skull without a jaw that is crowned with swords. You have figures that seem to be observing the person, figures that seem to be ridiculing the person. And in the back, someone is sitting on a throne, which also looks quite scary. So I don't know exactly yet what we can make from this. I think it's supposed to just be a general image of a nightmare or nightmarish thoughts or memories or traumas coming up. But if you have any more specific thoughts about this imagery, about the symbolism, do let me know. Because I think it's interesting, but I Can't quite put my finger on it. All right, so then we have the 10 of Wands. Usually, once again, this is quite different from the usual depiction. Usually, we have a person carrying the wands in their hands, and this person has a bag with the wands, which seems a lot more easy than carrying it with your hands. The whole point of the traditional interpretation of the card is that the person is holding it with their hands and they are almost falling. The wands are almost falling. The person is almost falling. It's very tedious. So we don't have that meaning here because the person is able to manage their task quite well. And it's not that idea of you're taking on too much responsibility, taking on too much tasks, like with the usual 10 of Swords, because this person is doing quite all right with it. So this card, meaning wise, could go more towards integrity, so more the positive side of the 10 of Swords, of taking responsibility and carrying it with honor and with integrity, carrying the responsibilities that you take on, being honest with your commitments rather than collapsing under them. Rather than collapsing, you find a way to make them work and to be true to your word. So I see more of that interpretation in this 10 of Swords, honestly. So that's it for the ethereal visions. Let me know if you want to see any other cards from this deck. There are more interesting ones, no doubt, but a lot of them are similar to the Rider-Waite. I can just, go through some other ones. If you want to see more of me interpreting cards like this, then do subscribe. As I said in the beginning, like this video, it does help a lot. You can also hype videos now. I saw that if they are new. So hype the video if YouTube lets you, I suppose. I also have a Patreon that you can check out, and I will probably use this deck to do the next collective reading that I do on there for October. So head over there if you want to see me read cards with this deck. I have journaling prompts over there. Thousands, no, it's not thousands, it's hundreds at this point, probably. A lot of journaling prompts that you can use with your deck, a lot of affirmations, a lot of collective readings, essays, podcast episodes where I talk about all kinds of witchy and tarot and spiritual wellness stuff. And yeah, head over there. It's in the description. It's also a very easy URL. It's just patreon.com/AnjaEsma, my name, and then you will be in my world. Also, if you have more, if you want to watch more deep dives of popular decks, I will link that below. If you have more decks that I should do deep dives on, do let me know as well. If you want me to take a look at a specific deck that you like. And also, at some point soon, I will do the transparent tarot. Let me know if you want to see that, if that is interesting to you, because the concept of the deck is really interesting. But I will not go into that now. That is too much for this video. It's already too long. So thank you so much for chilling with me at the Ethereal Visions deck, and I will see you very, very soon, hopefully. Bye-bye.